I've spent many years observing how people behave with money, from those earning very little to people with average incomes, all the way to people who actually make more than they need. And there's something interesting most people don't notice. The biggest problem with money isn't a lack of knowledge. It's how the brain reacts when it feels financially unsafe. When money is tight, your mind doesn't become worse at thinking. It just starts thinking differently. And if you don't understand that shift, you'll keep doing things that make money hard to hold on to, even when you're trying your best. Main idea, and then, when money feels tight, the brain doesn't look for solutions, it looks for relief. I've noticed the same pattern over and over again in people who are under financial stress or living on low income. They don't spend money because they don't know how to save. They spend money because their brain is looking for the fastest way to reduce pressure. Here's a very everyday example. Someone gets home from work, mentally exhausted, with this feeling in their body. Things are tight again this month. Everything needs thinking. Everything needs calculating. In that state, the brain doesn't ask, "Is this good for my long-term finances?" It asks just one question: what will make my head feel lighter right now? So it chooses a ready-made meal instead of cooking, a small purchase just to feel less stressed, a quick expense, not big, but instant. Not because the person is greedy, but because their brain needs to breathe. What's interesting is this: these purchases rarely make people happy for long. But they do something very important for the brain. They cut the pressure, even if only for a few minutes. And the brain remembers that. Next time the pressure comes back, the brain says, "Last time this helped me feel better. Let's do that again." That's how spending becomes a habit, not for enjoyment, but for emotional relief. Most people don't realize this. Saving doesn't fail because of the numbers. It fails because of the mental state before the spending happens. If you're trying to save while your mind is constantly tense, you always feel like you're lacking, you're afraid of making the wrong move, then every spending decision turns into a mental battle. And in a battle, when the brain is tired, it loses. People who are good at keeping money aren't stronger. They just don't end up in situations where they have to calm themselves down by spending. When pressure goes down, money naturally stays longer. That's why, before talking about tips or formulas, we have to talk about financial safety first. Main idea. 2. People who keep money don't rely on willpower. They rely on structure. I've noticed a clear difference between people who always say, "I just can't keep money," and people who do fairly well. The difference isn't discipline. It's whether they have to make money decisions all the time. Most people don't realize this. Every time you ask yourself, "Should I buy this? Should I spend this? Maybe I'll wait until tomorrow," you're burning mental energy, and that energy isn't unlimited. A normal day already requires countless decisions: work, family, health, relationships. If money also demands constant, careful thinking every time you open your wallet, sooner or later, the brain chooses the easiest option: spend it and stop thinking. People who keep money aren't better thinkers. They just have to think less. I've seen a very simple but effective structure many times. There's money they never touch. No thinking required. There's money they're allowed to spend without guilt. And there's money in between, used only under clear conditions. The key point is this: those boundaries are decided in advance when the mind is calm. Once the structure exists, they don't have to negotiate with themselves every day. Not because they're better, but because the rules are doing the thinking for them. Many people fail with money because they believe, "If I just try a little harder, be a little more disciplined, it'll work." But here's the problem. Willpower is the first thing to weaken when you're tired, hungry, stressed, or bored. Structure doesn't get tired. It stays in place, even on your worst days. And here's the interesting part. When money is given a clear role, the brain stops seeing all money as spendable money. Spending is no longer an emotional negotiation. It becomes an action with clear limits. People who keep money don't live worse lives. They just live less chaotic ones. Main idea. 3. Money disappears fastest, not through big purchases, but through repetition. What's interesting is that when people look back at their finances, they often say the same thing: "I didn't even buy anything big." And they're right. No new TV. No big vacation, no major expense, yet the money still disappears. I realized something important. The human brain underestimates expenses that repeat frequently. A small amount doesn't hurt. A quick purchase doesn't register. A decision made in seconds feels harmless. But when it repeats, every morning, every afternoon, every time you're tired, every whatever, it's fine. Money doesn't disappear in one hit. It disappears in a heartbeat rhythm. And the brain doesn't see it as a problem because each time is small, each time feels reasonable, each time has a justification. This creates a dangerous illusion. You feel in control when you're not. I've seen many people try to cut big expenses first, cancel long-term plans, delay goals, force themselves into scarcity, when what really needs attention first is daily spending rhythm. When income is low, financial recovery is slow. That makes daily expenses far more damaging than people expect. People who keep money well aren't necessarily the ones who spend the least. They're the ones who let money leave their hands unconsciously the least. They don't control money by checking every receipt. They control it by reducing how often they reach for their wallet. When those moments decrease, money naturally stays longer. No forcing, no promises, no self-blame. That's when many people notice something new: mental lightness. And when the mind feels lighter, money decisions improve naturally. Main idea 4. Delaying isn't weakness. It's how a smart brain protects money. I've noticed something fascinating about human spending behavior. Most unnecessary purchases don't come from real needs. They come from emotions running high. Tired, bored, stressed, irritated, or simply empty. In those moments, the brain doesn't care about budgets, plans, goals. It just wants the discomfort to stop fast. And spending money is one of the fastest ways to do that. What most people don't realize is this: emotion-driven spending urges are usually very short-lived. They're intense, but not durable. If you ask someone after they've bought something, "Do you still feel like you need this the way you did earlier?" Many people go quiet, not because they instantly regret it, but because the original emotion is already gone. People who keep money well aren't people who always say no. They're people who don't answer immediately. They create a small delay, not buying right away, not deciding instantly, not reacting on impulse. That delay does something powerful. It pulls the brain out of emotion and back into logic. And what's interesting is, many things lose their appeal after a day or two. Many decisions feel unnecessary once you're calm. Delaying doesn't take away freedom. It protects mental energy. You don't fight yourself. You just wait. And in the world of money, the person who can wait usually beats the person who reacts fast. When you don't spend at emotional peaks, you don't just keep the money, you keep control. Main idea 5. Money doesn't leak because you live without comfort. It leaks because you keep buying speed. After watching this for a while, I noticed something a bit paradoxical. A lot of people think they spend money because they want a more comfortable life, but in reality, they're paying for speed, not for quality of life. When life feels exhausting, the mind is overloaded and energy is low, the brain starts valuing one thing above everything else: getting things done fast. Fast food, fast transportation, fast solutions, fast decisions, so you don't have to think anymore. So money gets used to: avoid cooking, avoid waiting, avoid preparing, avoid planning. What's interesting is this: these expenses rarely make life better in the long run. They just make the present moment feel a little less tiring. But that little bit has a cost, and that cost isn't obvious each time. Each time it's just a small extra amount, not painful enough to notice, not clear enough to trigger concern, but repeated over time. It becomes a kind of invisible tax on people who already have limited money. People who keep money well aren't living deprived lives. They simply don't use money to buy speed unconsciously. They accept being a little slower, putting in a little more effort, thinking a little ahead. In return, they gain something extremely important: a sense of control. When you're not rushing, your brain is less tense. When your brain is less tense, you feel less need to reward yourself with spending. That creates a reverse loop. Less tension to less stress, spending, less spending to money. Money stays to the mind, feels lighter. Most people don't realize this. When income is low, time is often more available than money. If you unconsciously use money to save time, you're trading what's scarce for what's still flexible. People who understand money don't live slower because they're idle. They live slower because they know what's worth protecting. Main idea 6. There are phases when money needs strict rules, so your mind can rest. There's something few people say out loud. Money doesn't always need to be managed in a flexible and comfortable way. There are periods when trying to keep everything comfortable actually makes you more exhausted. When finances are fragile, every spending decision turns into an open question, and open questions always drain mental energy. Should I buy this? It's probably fine, right? Don't I deserve this a little? Each question seems harmless, but repeated every day, the brain burns out fast. People who observe long enough notice something important. The fewer choices you have, the calmer your mind becomes. Those who get through hard financial periods faster usually do one similar thing. They set temporary rules, not rules to punish themselves, rules so they don't have to think. For example, certain things are temporarily not purchased. No debate, some spending is allowed only within very clear limits. Some decisions are postponed entirely. Once the rules exist, the brain no longer negotiates with emotions every day. You don't need to be strong, you just need to follow what you decided while you were clear-headed. What matters is this: these phases don't last forever. They exist to stop money from flowing out, stabilize your daily rhythm, bring you back to a place where you can breathe. When things become less shaky, the rules loosen, but without that initial firm phase, it's very hard to get there. Most people fear discipline because they think it makes life heavier, but in reality, discipline at the right time makes life lighter because it reduces bad decisions. Money doesn't need you to be perfect all year. It just needs you to be serious during a few key phases. Main idea 7. When cutting expenses stops working, spending is no longer the real problem. After watching long enough, I noticed a very specific moment in many people's financial journey. It's the point where they've cut almost all unnecessary expenses, thought carefully before every purchase, tried to live more simply, yet their finances still don't improve much. That's when many people start blaming themselves. Maybe I'm not disciplined enough. I must still be wasting money somewhere. But here's the interesting part. There are phases where spending is no longer the root problem. When income is already low and you've been cutting for too long, each additional cut doesn't bring relief. It brings stress. And that stress is dangerous because when the brain feels suffocated, unable to breathe, unable to see progress, it starts looking for ways to break the system, even a system that was helping. People who observe money behavior closely realize this. Money doesn't just need controlled outflow. It also needs enough inflow for the brain to feel hope. Even a small increase in income, a short-term side job, temporary work, selling something unused can shift the mental state. From Etsy, nothing I do matters to, okay, I can still make this work. And when the state changes, behavior follows. People spend less impulsively, not because they force themselves, but because they're no longer trapped in a corner. The key point is this. Increasing cash flow doesn't need to be perfect or permanent. It just needs to break the deadlock, create breathing room, show the brain that effort leads to results. When money has a way in, saving no longer feels like holding your breath. It starts to feel meaningful. People who keep money well don't always spend less, but they're very sensitive to knowing when to tighten and when to open another path. Main idea 8. Money needs to be named. Otherwise, the brain treats it all as spendable. I notice something subtle in how people manage their money. It's not that they don't know their balance. They know it very well. The problem is that all the money sits in one place. When all money is in one pile, the brain sees it as the same. There's no clear distinction between money for survival, money for casual spending, money for emergencies, and in emotional moments, any part of it can be justified. I'll just take a bit from here. I'll make it up next month. It's not that much. What's interesting is this. The human brain is terrible at protecting things without a clear role. Money without a specific job is money that gets misused easily. People who keep money well do something very simple. They divide money into clear zones. No complexity, no fancy spreadsheets. Just money strictly for essentials, money allowed for spending within limits, money they promise not to touch unless it truly matters. Once money is named, the brain behaves differently. When you're about to spend, the question is no longer, do I have money? It becomes, is this the right money for this? That question alone prevents many bad decisions without relying on willpower. And this structure works even when you're tired, bored, or unmotivated. You don't need to become disciplined. You just need to not break the boundaries already set. People who keep money well aren't better at controlling themselves. They simply don't put themselves in situations that require constant self-control. When money has order, the mind follows. And when the mind is less chaotic, money naturally stops evaporating. Main idea, don't. Healthy urgency moves you forward. Panic only repeats mistakes. I've noticed many people confuse urgency with panic. When money feels tight, they push themselves with thoughts like, I need to act fast. If I don't change now, I'm done. I'm falling behind. These thoughts create movement, but chaotic movement. Panic makes the brain run fast but without direction. In that state, people change plans, constantly tighten today, loosen tomorrow, cut too hard, then overspend to compensate from the outside. It looks like effort. Inside, there's no momentum. What's interesting is this. People who keep money well take their situation seriously too. They don't ignore it. They don't calm themselves with, it'll be fine. But they don't let fear drive. Healthy urgency is different from panic because it's calm, it's steady, it focuses on what can be done today. Instead of asking, how do I escape as fast as possible? They ask, what small thing today makes tomorrow less risky than yesterday? That question sounds slow, but it creates a stable rhythm. And rhythm is what keeps money in place. Panic makes you spend to self-soothe, break structures you built, make decisions you have to undo later. Calm urgency does the opposite. It protects structure. It accepts slow progress. It prioritizes not making things worse. Most people don't realize this. Money improves, not when you do the most, but when you stop doing the things that make it worse. When you keep the rhythm, confidence returns. And when confidence returns, money behavior naturally becomes less extreme. People who understand money don't run. They move steadily. Main idea 10. Savings don't disappear because the plan is wrong. They disappear because access is too easy. After years of observing this, I realized something simple but critical. Many people know how to save. They start correctly. They have good intentions. Yet the money still doesn't stay. Not because they aren't serious, but because their savings are always within reach. In moments of strong emotion, stress, boredom, fear, or even excitement, the brain becomes very good at self-justification. I'll just take a little. I'll replace it later. This is a special case. The problem isn't the words. The problem is that they're spoken when you're not clear-headed. People who keep money well don't believe I'll be rational in that moment. They understand this. When emotions run high, logic arrives late. So they quietly do one thing. Keep savings a little farther away, a little harder to access, a little inconvenient, not to punish themselves, but to create time. And time does something powerful. It lets emotions cool down. When emotions cool down, many decisions simply disappear. Well-protected savings don't feel fragile. They feel stable. And that sense of stability is what allows money to grow. What's interesting is this. People who keep money well don't need high motivation. They just need fewer temptations, fewer impulsive decisions, fewer chances to sabotage their own plan. Money doesn't grow through intense bursts of effort. It grows through ordinary days where nothing goes wrong. If money feels tight right now, I don't want you to change everything at once. Just choose one thing from this video, one boundary, one slower rhythm, one small structure, and start there. Money doesn't need you to become someone else. It just needs you to put yourself in a position where you do less harm to yourself. If these insights match your own experience, hit like so this video reaches others who need it too. And subscribe if you want to understand money more deeply, not through get-rich-quick formulas, but by seeing clearly the psychology behind everyday money decisions. Thank you for staying until the end.